keep hearing the same questions over and over. Things like, how are interest rates going to be looking throughout the course of 2024? Is this a good time to buy, or should we wait? If you're thinking about moving here from out of state, what do you need to know? These are all some of the biggest questions I get on a weekly basis, so I brought a really good friend of mine in to hopefully help you out with this. Ruth Dudley from Yes Mortgage is joining us today to help us answer a bunch of the common questions that we see. Ruth has more than 7 years of experience. She actually started out as a realtor, so she knows my side of the business, and then transitioned and got her loan officer license and has been doing that for the last couple of years. She is a wealth of knowledge about all the things you should, or maybe shouldn't, do when you're looking at buying or selling a home. Ruth, thank you so much for being here with me today.
I am so happy to do this. Thank you for having me. I'm excited because I'm getting a lot of those same things as well, especially with the new year. I think everybody's kind of getting their ducks in a row and figuring out what they want to do with a plan. And so I'm right there with you, sister.
So I guess let's tackle the biggest one that you probably hear every day. I know I'm hearing it every day. Mortgage rates are predicted to fall throughout the course of 2024. I've been hearing everything from like, oh, we'll see low sixes, high fives by the end of the year.
Yes.
What are you thinking we're going to see?
Well, if I had a crystal ball, you and I would be on a beach somewhere.
At a bar. Yeah. Tiki bar.
What I can do is I can share kind of what I'm hearing. And so I feel like there's a lot of kind of conversation going around refinances. So I think we're going to see like a refinance boom or two, which is great. I think it'll allow people to, pay off debts to also then get pre-approved so they can get out of that home and kind of let go of that rate they've been holding on to for so long. But I'm hearing that the projections are that by March, there's a 50% likelihood that we're going to start seeing our first rate cut. And then there's another projection that we'll have 6 more after that. And so, again, take it for what it's worth. But that is what I'm hearing. I feel very excited about it. So I think this is going to be a good year.
Okay. So if the rates do drop, and I know you just touched on that a little bit, I was going to ask, what do you predict? It sounds like a lot of refinances.
Yeah. I think, that's a great opportunity for a lot of people is, don't be afraid as a realtor, about refinances, because that's going to allow people to consolidate a lot of debt. Even at the higher interest rates that we've been at, it's still going to be lower than the 25, 26, 27% that people are paying. So that I think is one thing that we'll see, which is going to open up the buyer market as well. But then I think a lot of people are just ready to kind of dive in. I think we've made it through the worst of it, I think. And it's just, I think a lot of people just kind of froze for a while. And I think we're on the other side. And so I think it's going to be a really big year for everybody.
And I hadn't even thought about folks who might be refinancing in 2024 to position themselves to be able to buy. When I hear refinance, I think, well, that's awesome for them. I'm really glad.
Right.
It's helping them pay off debt or get a lower mortgage payment or cash out some equity or whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
But as a realtor, I hadn't really taken it that next step and really thought, well, that also might be positioning themselves for 6 or 12 months down the road.
Absolutely.
Being in a position to
That's
then
why I
sell
say
and buy.
don't be afraid of it. Lean into it, because also that, if they do, for example, a cash out refinance, that may allow them to do some upgrades to the home that, they've needed to do and haven't been in a position to do. And so I think that it's going to open up a lot of things, whether it's paying down debt to where debt to income ratios work better, and they can buy, or if they're getting their home ready to sell. So I think it's going to be a win-win across the board. I'm taking a very optimistic approach to all of this. So,
so it sounds like the next question I was going to ask was, do you think we'll be seeing more buyers in 2024? It sounds like probably so.
I think what we're going to see is people are going to be used to what rates have been, and so they're more likely to kind of lean into that idea. And I think what happened was rates were so low, it was historical, right? We were going through some major events there that when they started to increase, they increased so rapidly that people just absolutely got scared.
And they forget, like when I bought my first home, 1999. Yes, I dated myself there. It's all good. my interest rate was about 8%.
Yeah.
And I was turning cartwheels. Like, that was astronomical. And so when people were freaking out over 8% towards the end of last year, I'm like, it's really not if you look at the history of mortgages. But it's hard to hear 8%.
Absolutely.
We heard 2s and 3s for so long. Ugh. It's a tough one to swallow.
Okay, we can process.
Exactly. 2023 was the year of process. So if you had a friend or a family member that was looking to get into the market and maybe buy their first house or upsize their house or downsize their house, what would you tell them?
To me, I think the biggest conversation I'm actually having this with one of my family members as we speak, but it's really about making a plan, but then also affordability. Focus on what you can afford. Don't necessarily worry about the interest rate per se, but focus on, can I afford this comfortably? And comfortably is the key word. Right? I know that's something you and I agree with. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, okay?
Men, sister.
And so that's the biggest thing is, can you afford it comfortably? And then if you can, let's look at what we're going to do to get there. And so I think it's really, not to sound, like a politician and like I'm dodging the answer, but I think it really just comes down to each person, what their goal is, short-term and long-term, and then making a plan for them. And that's where having these relationships with amazing realtors like yourself, loan officers who work so well together, we can really be a team for them. And that's the biggest thing to me.
So let's shift gears just a smidge. Let's talk about what kinds of loan options are out there for folks. I know everyone always talks about first-time home buyers. Military buyers are near and dear to my heart. What options are out there for folks these days?
There are a ton of options. And again, you're going to hear me kind of say this a lot, so y'all bear with me. But a lot of it, there are tons of options out there. There's tons of amazing programs, but it's really about figuring out what works for them. I think one thing is FHA is one of the best programs for a lot of people. It gives a lot of variety in regards to credit score, minimum down payment, debt to income numbers. There's a lot of things that are going to benefit people. So that's why I'm also working on having those conversations with realtors about not being scared of FHA. Okay? Y'all hear me on this?
Yeah. FHA and VA are not label.
No. And so that's a big conversation. But I will say, so you've got your THDA, Chenoa, you have a lot of these programs. And while they're great, you have to meet a lot of criteria. So you have to check a lot of boxes. So not only is it geographical with USDA, for example, but sometimes it can have income restrictions or credit restrictions. And so that's where, again, it kind of circles back to that conversation because they're all out there. It's just a matter of figuring out what works best for them. And sometimes those can be a little challenging with fitting them in the right box.
And let's chat for just a minute. I know a lot of folks know that I'm a military family member. I'm a military mama, and my husband served before we were married. I cannot claim to have been a military spouse, but my babies are out there. And so a lot of people think, if I'm military, I can only utilize a VA loan and I have to go through like a USAA or a Veterans United or one of those. I know that you can do VA loans.
Yes.
So let's tell the world, it doesn't have to be one of the, military affiliated, so to speak.
Right.
Programs.
And as you know, I think too, is some of these companies that say they're affiliated are not always. So vet your people. My dad was Navy for 22 years as well. So that is a big thing for me too.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another thing. So VA, obviously a great program. It's incredible. But again, you don't have to just be in this one box. So that's something that we can figure out, what makes the most sense. And sometimes having those loan programs right side by side and weighing those options is sometimes the most helpful for all of us. It's about picking what is the most right for that family.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to kind of go off a script.
Oh, right.
Second go. And Mom, I want to toot your horn. Because one of the things I love about what you do and we are going to touch on it in a few minutes, is you do a lot of out-of-area relocation. But I love how you will meet with clients in person and you will Zoom with clients. And you have done this with my clients.
Yes.
Where you do exactly that. You put like, here's your FHA options, here's your conventional options, here's your VA option, whatever their options are.
Right.
And you explain it to them and you break it down so they understand they're really looking at apples to apples then, not apples to oranges. So for what that's worth, thank you for that. And guys, that's one thing that is just hugely important is make sure in your relationship with your loan officer that they're doing that for you, that they're giving you options and they're truly walking you through them and helping you understand them, because we look at them every day. For us, it's, ABC 1, 2, 3, but we know that's not the case for everybody.
Right.
Because it's not what they do every day.
Right.
I don't perform brain surgery, thank God. So I wouldn't have the first clue how to get started. So I know we've talked about different loan options and you kind of touched on USDA. Let's chat for just a second about down payment assistance options for some of those, especially my first time younger buyers who may not have 3%, 3.5%, let alone 20%.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you circled back to that, because I know I touched on it a minute ago, but that is something, like I said, there's a lot of options out there, but again, it can get a little tricky, right? Do you check all the boxes to get you there? But again, that is where we make a plan. We figure out, okay, if you're okay with being in a rural area, let's look at USDA. It's like, is your credit where it needs to be to get there? It's like, so looking at those options. But something that I know you and I have talked about is what we're doing at Yes Mortgage with our Mortgage as a Benefit is partnering with local and national companies that we offer up to 1% towards the borrower's closing costs and out-of-pocket expense with a max of $5,000. And that's been incredible to be able to partner with employers, because we know, money is tight for a lot of people and every little bit helps. And so it's like, if we can partner with them, some employers will match those dollars, similar to a 401k, some won't. It's tailored to them, but it's completely free to the employer, and it's been a really great program for their employees, so
up to $5,000, that's a lot of money.
Yeah,
especially when you're having to come up with a down payment and closing costs.
Right.
Those checks get big. Yeah, get hairy.
Yeah. So every little bit helps, and so that's been one thing. While because that allows us to branch out even more from just these traditional programs. That, it's like, okay, like I said, is it geographic? Do you make too much money? And it's like, there are certain parameters that you have to meet. And that's where the challenge comes in. We can do anything. It's just a matter of if it makes sense and, getting it there. But that's one thing that has been, phenomenal, because that can be applied to anyone, and so that's been really, really great for a lot of our first-time buyers.
Yeah. I love that you said that, because there's so many times I say to people, like, they'll ask me, is this possible from a loan standpoint? Or is this possible to do to this house? And I'll be like, well, anything's possible. Is it advisable? Maybe a different question. So let's talk about the chicken and the egg.
Okay. Let's go.
So what would you recommend? Do you feel like it behooves people, because you've been on both sides of this now. Do you think it's a better option for them to connect with the lender first and get the finances in order, or to connect with a realtor first, who's going to end up connecting them back to a loan officer to get those numbers in place? What makes the most sense?
I feel like you can't go wrong with either one necessarily. So I'll use, that'll be my political stance today, where I'm like,
your politicians.
We are in an election year, which we will circle back to. But that, to me, it's like, when you do have a really good team and you have trusted partners, I know, that if I get somebody and what they're looking for, that I'm going to get them right back to you, and vice versa. And so it's one of those things that, like, when you have that trusted relationship, that they're going to advise appropriately. Now, I will say, don't go falling in love with houses. They're not pre-approved for. I don't want your heart to be broken, or yours. Thank you. It's hard on all of us. So that is where I would say, the conversation, you can have that, I really think, at any time and connect with who you feel closest to. A lot of times I feel like people feel like it's easier to reach out to the realtor because, lenders, we can be very scary.
So can we. It's all fair.
And so I think when they can connect with you and say, hey, I don't know what to do, you can be like, come on, and so that's what I would say. Just, I would steer clear of maybe seeing houses prior to knowing really what you can do. So that's my biggest.
Namaste. Thank you. I have that conversation so many times because folks, when I say to them, I want you to get pre-approved before we start looking. Because like clients will come to me, we'll do the buyer consultation. And I'll ask them, are you already working with a lender? And if they are, great. I respect that relationship. If they're not, let me connect you. Because people think it's because we don't want to be out showing the houses. And that's not it at all. No. Please hear me, guys. It's not that I don't want to show you that house. It's exactly what Ruth was just saying. I don't want to show you that house. You fall in love with that house. And then we can't get you that house. That just set you up to fail. And I know Ruth never likes to do that to her clients. I don't like to do that to my clients. I don't know too many people who enjoy that. So it's always a good idea. Yeah. Have your financial ducks in a row. Kind of along the same vein, I think the longest tenure I've had so far is a little over 2 years with a client, from initial consultation to purchase. And when people ask me, hey, well, when should I come and talk to you? I always say, as soon as you think you might be looking to buy or sell, please come talk to me. Yeah. And if it's not for 2 or 3 years, that's fine. I'm not going anywhere. Let's strategize.
Yes.
What's your philosophy on that?
The exact same. I could echo that 1,001 times. I always say it's never too early to have that conversation. And that is something that a lot of people are very afraid of doing that. I'm sure you get this too, where they said, I don't want to waste your time. And you're not wasting our time. I promise. This is what we're here for. This is what we love to do. And having those conversations, and like when people feel rushed or backed into a corner, I think that's where, again, we see a lot of that kind of freeze, fight or flight mentality. And so having those conversations, because what we can do is, you may be 6-9 months out, but we can have the conversation. I can go over some credit TLC things. We might have a few things that we can do here and there, because even just little things. And then, if it's 6 months down the road, we'll re-pull credit and see what we're working with. But at least you'll know. And a lot of people are far more prepared than I think they realize. Like, I think that's a big thing. A lot of people think, oh, I've got to do this. I need 20%. No, you don't. No, you don't. And so that is really the biggest thing is, having that conversation early. Let's make a plan. And then if the picture perfect home pops up and it checks all your boxes, and, let's go for it, and that's the biggest thing. And then you're not rushing and everybody's just, like a cat in a bathtub, That's like,
oh. No, thank you. I have enough trouble getting my dog in the bathtub. So what would be your advice both for buyers and for sellers in 2024?
I would say, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but, I just believe in this. I'm a big believer in conversation, but figure out a plan. If you're looking at selling, connect with your realtor, figure out, what they would suggest, what they would do, but also connect with a lender and figure out, what is my payoff? What do I need, to walk away? 'Cause I think that's a huge part of negotiation as well, is figuring out where people need to be.
And a lot of times if you're selling, you're going to be buying somewhere.
Exactly. And so it's like, again, that team aspect of figuring out what are we trying to do? Like sometimes it's like, we got to just figure out, like, what are we doing? And then you can work backwards from there. To kind of go off a little bit. But one of the things I ask people is like, what is your ideal monthly payment? Like, that is what I structure a lot of my loans around, because it's like, it doesn't matter. It's like, if I can get you pre-approved at $500,000, that's great. But if that's double what you want to pay,
just because you can,
it doesn't mean you should.
High five.
And so that is kind of the same concept to me, is like, same with selling and buying. So those are kind of connected. So again, what are we trying to do? Where do you want to be? Not only, geographically, but financially. And then you make your plan with your realtor and your lender. And I think that's the best path to success, really, is what are we doing?
We've done a lot of the going off script here, so I'm just going to throw this out there. At the end of the day, you have to choose the realtor that fits your personality and your goals and your style, and the lender that fits your personality and your goals and your style. But if I can suggest anything to you, it would be please, please, please use a local lender. Because as you can probably tell, Ruth and I have a relationship. If something happens with your deal at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be able to get a hold of her. And vice versa. Something goes sideways and she has to do a credit pull and she can get a hold of me at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night and say, hey, Shell, help me strategize. And we will work through it to help you. I have clients that come to me all the time, and I mean no disrespect to any of the online lending companies out there, but they're not a Ruth Dudley. I can't call them on a Tuesday night and say, we've hit a snag, or, hey, we just found the house. I need an updated pre-approval letter dated within the last 7 days that only gives the amount we're offering. Because, side notes, none of the seller's business what you can do. It's their business that you can do what we're saying you're going to do. And so with local lenders, I can do that. So just for some reason that just popped into my head and I felt the need.
Well, I want to piggyback on that for just a second, but I say the same thing. There's a lot of great companies and loan officers out there, but at the same time, like I tell people, I'm like, listen, I want you to have a good experience, not only because that's how we build our business, right, is our reputation and our work ethic, but I've run into clients at Target before, and luckily it usually goes with like a hug and a how are you, but it's like, I don't want you to have a bad experience. And then I live here locally. I live in Maryville. It's like Maryville and Knoxville, they feel small sometimes. And so it's like you want that connection because you're going to see these people.
I went out to eat this weekend and I looked up and my server was one of my clients. Think about it. She controlled my food.
Yeah. You don't ever mess with somebody.
No.
Deals with your food.
Let me introduce you to my family. So yes. And, we live here.
We have to see you and we want those relationships to be good because you're our neighbor. Like literally. And so
yes,
that's a big thing for me too. It's just, I think it's just a different connection than some online companies or call centers that you may experience.
So I'm going to kind of switch gears just a smidge and talk a little bit more specifically about those folks who are moving here from out of state.
Yes.
I'm getting a ton of chatter on the YouTube channel with people talking about all the folks moving here from other areas. What's your best advice for those folks who are trying to move here and they don't necessarily have the local connections or know the area?
I would say, again, I'm big on local, right? So again, connect with someone like yourself. But the biggest thing that I run into with out-of-state clients is, what are we doing for employment? A lot of people can relocate. COVID taught us that, right? Everybody can work from home, right? We figured it out. But the relocation part of employment is, okay, are you going to work remotely? If not, are you going to have another job opportunity somewhere else? And that is the biggest first step, is what are we doing with employment? And so that would be my biggest advice to my relocation clients. And, again, connecting with a local realtor who's been doing it for a while, who is and I know that you connect with people virtually, in person. You do all the things to build that relationship and that connection. So I would say those two things are the most important.
So, $1 million question.
Oh gosh,
I get this all the time, and I'm like, guys, I'm not a loan officer. Tag, you're it. Do you personally think we will ever see interest rates around that 2-3% again?
I'm so torn on this. I hope not. Which
I agree with you. It's okay.
I hope not, because to me that means something bad has happened.
Yeah.
Because that was such a trying time for our country and just globally. for that reason, I kind of hope not, because that probably means we're in a pickle again.
Well, and prices did this.
Yes.
When rates got that low.
So I don't think, I don't think we'll be there. I would say more mid to high 4s, low 5s, and I'm good with that. I think we could all agree that that's a healthy
place to be.
Absolutely, and you can do a lot with that, and that makes such a difference from 5% to 7%. I mean, that was one thing that priced a lot of people out of the market. So as you mentioned earlier, I do have a real estate background, and so I did that for almost 5 years. But I saw a lot of clients starting to wait, or just they weren't sure. And I had a client, and I remember it was 2018, and they at that time 185 was their top. Said, we're not going above 185. Totally respect that, totally understand. But they kept passing on things. And do we wait? And because they didn't have necessarily a reason to move, and so they didn't have a sense of urgency, and that's okay. They had a great setup. However, once I transitioned into lending and they kind of circled back around, their bottom dollar was now 250, 265, because the market, that 185, and
there wasn't going to be anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So between home prices increasing and then interest rates, and so they kind of priced themselves out of the market. So that's why, again, it kind of goes back to, can you afford it comfortably? Because it's if we're all waiting for the exact right time, there's never
perfection. Yeah.
No.
Well, let's segue in and watch the clip.
Here are a few questions you should be asking yourself when you're moving out of state. You should be asking yourself, what's my budget? Do I feel comfortable driving a big truck long distance? Am I going to need to store my stuff in my old or new city? Am I going to be able to load things on my own time? How much time do I need to move my stuff from one place to another? How much stuff am I moving? Do I have any friends to help me load or unload my stuff? And do I need to hire people to help me load or unload my stuff once I get there?
Okay, first of all, I have to say those guys crack me up. I love watching them. I absolutely agree with everything they're saying about logistics. Guys, those are all things you're going to have to worry about. Please reach out to us, talk to us.
Absolutely.
We don't just live in a bubble I just show houses and Ruth just does loans. We know movers, packers, electricians, plumbers, roofers, foundation guys, cleaners, painters. Anything that you need related to your move, you should be talking with your team about that.
Absolutely.
Hey, I'm moving from California to Tennessee, and that's a really big move. Help?
Well, and we love to help. I mean, that's one of the things that I think we love the most about this job is getting to help people, and every story is different. But we can also really help logistically too. And from a loan officer perspective, it's let us know if you're going to be a mail away, if you're not going to be present for closing, let us know
early and often.
Yes. No. Shelby's heard me say this before. Think of me like your defense attorney.
I love that.
I just need to know it all. Okay. I don't
judge it.
We don't judge. I just need to know everything so we can make the best plan possible.
Exactly.
So
I don't care. I just need to know.
Exactly. So never be afraid to talk to us about what's going on or what you're trying to do. There's no silly questions. And that allows us to advocate for you in the best way possible. And also if we have any kind of concerns, if the sellers are running behind on something, or, life happens and we can get ahead of it a lot faster to prevent those last minute,
don't fire drills that you're bothering us. We'd rather know. Trust me. If we know, we can help fix.
Absolutely.
If we're blindsided, it's harder to step in and help fix
every time.
Pro tip, if you're moving for a job, ask them if they cover moving expenses. If they do, it could save you a ton of money. Mm-hmm. I did that with my last move, and they covered it, which was not expected, but it was a great surprise, and I 10 out of 10 would recommend.
Number 5, your emergency fund. Maybe you hit some really nasty weather on your drive to the new state that you're going to go live in, and now you have to stay in some strange city for a few extra days than you had originally planned. Or maybe you're on that drive and your car breaks down and you're going to have to pay for it. Having an emergency fund for this type of stuff is super important.
I actually serve on the relocation team for my brokerage. And he's right. There are a lot of companies that actually will move you. It's a streamlined process. They have a relocation company they contract with. That company contacts my brokerage. My brokerage assigns you to me. I got this. And we manage it. But not every company does.
Right.
It's always worth asking. Even if they don't foot the whole bill, they might cover some.
Right. It never hurts to ask. Like I said, that always ask questions. It doesn't hurt. And then I really liked what they said about the emergency fund too, because again, from a loan officer perspective, one of the conversations I have is, how much do you have access to? How much are you wanting to put towards your down payment? And all of those things. So it lets, it's like if you do run into a snack, because again, life happens, we can say you're totally good here, and walk you through what you have access to financially. So, even if you have to dip into that emergency fund, it won't feel as scary because we've already talked about it. We know
that money's there. It's set aside. It's gravy if you don't need it.
Yes.
But it's there if you do. It's like landing on a soft pillow instead of running 90 miles an hour into a brick wall.
Yeah, and you know that it won't impact your loan.
Exactly. Because Lord knows we've had last minute. Oh, for the love.
Oh, gosh.
Make sure you get all of the utilities turned on before you move into the house. There is nothing worse than showing up at the house and realizing you have no running water or no electricity.
Amen. Y'all, your realtor should be providing you with a full list of utility information. I provide mine 7 to 10 days ahead of closing because I do not want hiccups. You will find I'm a very anti-hiccup person. I'd rather give you that information early, and then if there's any problems, we have time to work through them. But absolutely, your realtor should be providing you with that information, even just a day or two before closing is typically plenty. Nobody's going to want to show up to a house in December without heat or August without air conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
That's not friendly.
No, it's not. That is not Southern hospitality, okay? that is not how we do things. But I think like another point too is finding out if you what all you need for that specific utility company. I know in Maryville, when I closed several years ago, we had to have a lot of information from the loan officer. And, and so it's like helping you kind of have those ducks in a row again, making sure we're not doing a closing at 4 p.m. and you got to be there at 5, and they close for the weekend and it's 4th of July. You know what I mean? It's like,
this is got a weekend.
Yeah, it's all about planning and preparation. So,
and that's just as a side note, I always try to tell my sellers, if we're closing on a Friday, guys, don't have the utilities cut off until Tuesday, give a little grace.
Absolutely.
But when I'm representing the buyers, I'm always like, guys, you have those accounts transferred, not terminated and transferred. Saves you a lot of hookup charges sometimes, not all the time. But have them transferred into your name effective the day of closing. Even if we're closing at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, okay, so you paid the electric bill starting at, 12:01 a.m.
Yeah, and I think, like you said too, having the water on and also those things, because from an appraisal perspective, those are things we need to have lights on and, be able to look at the home. And so that is another aspect of it as well, just on the lending side.
So guys, we're going to just do a couple of the kind of FAQs that we get a lot. Hopefully they'll help you out. So what determines whether or not someone's going to qualify for a mortgage? And what do they need to give you to apply?
Okay, so there are a lot of factors that go into qualification. So credit score, debt to income, a lot of those eligibility factors. But what will help me with that is having, your last 2 years W-2s, looking at the last 30 days of pay stubs. Those documents to really figure out how you qualify, what you qualify for, and where we're at. Driver's license. A lot of it's where have you lived and where have you worked the last 2 years? That's what I tell people. And that's usually the hardest part. Sometimes remembering that address from a year ago. But that's really it. It's just those basic things.
That's not so bad. So what kind of credit score do people need?
Shelby. I know. So I feel so that is a tricky question, and I'm not gonna politician answer. I'll try not to. So, for example, if you are just trying to find out the minimum credit score, we can do a 580. However, there are a lot of other factors to that. You know, do we have a 580 and debt to income issues lower? You know, what are we working with?
Yeah.
But, you know, it's like, do we have a 580? I have a ton in savings. I have a 6-figure job. And life happens. That's that's the biggest thing I know with this job. And it's like sometimes people, you've had a divorce and maybe the other person wasn't super great and, you know, it dinged your credit. But it's like if you've also got money in savings and a good job and all those things, it's like, so that's kind of the political answer to it is, you know, it varies, but 580 is kind of the minimum to start with, and then we kind of work our way up from there.
And it varies. Different loan types have different requirements too.
Exactly. So
depending on what loan type may or may not work for you.
Exactly. And
something to look at.
And that's where it just comes back to the conversation and getting in front of us, that I've based my entire mortgage career at this point on connecting with people in person or virtually, and because it's just such a human connection. And I think having those conversations, and then you start figuring out where you fall. And if you do have some credit TLC that we need to work on, we have a Wayfinder feature that allows us to say, okay, if you do this, this, and this, you have a 95% likelihood to get to 640 or 660 or whatever those tiers are. And those can make an impact on you financially.
Exactly. So what do you typically recommend is kind of a good ballpark amount people should plan for a down payment?
Well, I would say, if we are trying to do the minimum, you've got for a down payment, if we're not looking at down payment assistance or other options like that, FHA is 3.5% down. That's your go-to there. And then we do have some conventional options that are 3% or 5% down. And so I would say anywhere between 3 and 5% is a great starting point. But again, we'll figure out what loan program you fall into and then go from there.
Okay. When would you recommend somebody consider doing a refinance? Is there a magic, if it drops X%, or is there any kind of good rule of thumb?
It really depends on, exactly what you're trying to do and when you're trying to do it. So again, what are we trying to accomplish here? But I really think it comes down to, a half point to a point is where you're going to really see those big impacts. But I tell clients, I've had this a couple times here just recently this year where it's like it may just not be the right time yet. A lot of people are excited about refinancing. Trust me, I am too. I'm ready for it. But let's wait and see what the best option is for you.
Earlier, you talked about the focus on what can you afford.
Yes.
I have people come to buyer consultations all the time and tell me, I can afford X amount per month. And I'm like, that's awesome. Let me have your loan officer tell you what that translates into, because I don't know your financial picture.
Yes.
How do you answer that question? Like if someone says, well, how much mortgage can I afford?
Well, I mean, that is one of those things that I can tell you, what it looks like from a debt to income perspective or DTI, and I can see what's reported on your credit, but I don't know about your Netflix, and I don't know about, all of your Starbucks. Yeah, exactly. So we only see so much. And so that's where I think sitting down and getting honest with yourself, and really listing everything, because I can only go based off of what I'm seeing, and we can have that conversation, but that's the biggest thing is getting honest with yourself and looking at, those Starbucks trips and things like that.
Yep.
To know, okay, that I will be comfortable here. And so that is absolutely the biggest advice I can have.
Get right, folks.
Yes.
So how long does a typical mortgage, I know sometimes we always have those outliers, but if someone said, hey, how long would it take for me to get my mortgage? What's that look like?
I would say start to finish, the easiest, the easiest answer, I would say 30 days or less. That is, give me a 30-day contract and we can knock that out in no time. Now, if we have a situation where, there's certain circumstances that we have to meet, then, you just figure it out. But I would say 30 days is a great rule of thumb.
Yeah. And I know we used to hear folks would say, oh, well, FHAs and VAs take 45. And here recently I've been seeing really, other than USDA.
Yeah, no,
Everything's been fitting within that 30-day window.
absolutely. And the reason USDA kind of has that, or THDA, some of those other programs, is because they have to go to another underwriting process with USDA. And so that's where you can kind of run into those little snags because everybody's not working on the same timeline you're working with.
There we go. Fair enough. I always like to check myself here. When a client comes to you and they say, well, how much should I prepare for my closing costs? How do you answer that for them?
I would say, again, this is just going to be a rule of thumb. So I'm going to give you two things. So one, I would say roughly 3% of your purchase price. That's probably going to be a little conservative, but that's going to give you a realistic number to work with. And then the other rule of thumb I would say is here, for every $1,000 that you're going to go up or down on your purchase price, it's going to impact your monthly payment by about $7.
Okay.
And so that is another great rule of thumb that when you're trying to figure out, when you're negotiating and all that stuff and you're thinking $2,000 and it's like, okay, am I going to walk away from this house over $14? And it's like,
please, Lord, no.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, I won't get the venti today. It's like, so just those little things are really helpful. Yeah. But again, being able to access your loan officer or trusted representative to say, hey, we're going between these two, and look at those numbers.
Due to my yeah.
Because those are valid questions.
They are, especially when you're looking at your total monthly outflow for your budget.
Yeah.
So last question I have for you is if somebody wants to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way to connect with me, I'm a big fan of calling me or texting me. So if they pick up the phone, or if you don't want to do that, text me. But my phone number, 865-207-3483, is the best way to get a hold of me directly. That's my personal number, and I'm happy to answer. And I also work on evenings and weekends as well, so don't hesitate. We have to accommodate work schedules, I say I still work realtor hours, even though I'm not one.
Well, and I tell people all the time when they're new loan officers are ever coming into the business, I'm like, guys, we work when our clients don't.
Yep.
Because that's how they can afford a house.
Correct.
So that's just the way that goes. So thank you for doing this. Guys, if you are looking to buy, sell, or invest in the Knoxville market or surrounding area, and you would like to be taken care of by a trusted advisor, please contact me. I would love the opportunity to do a free consultation with you. You can contact me directly via email. I find that works a little better. It's Shelby@brookshomegroup.com.